In one of the paradigms of reality and relationship, there's a fractal pattern that begins perhaps initially with the parent-child template, is internalized, but then begins within the individual and is replicated through the process of causing and allowing in our external relationships in our lives. And one of the things that is the hardest thing for me to deal with as an abuse survivor, as a trauma survivor, is that there's a part of me that believes that I deserve the abuse, that the abuse is right, and there's a deep discomfort in breaking that template. As a result, despite rational awareness, when people abuse or push on me in the domains where I believe that that's right, normal, or that I deserve it, at an emotional level, I cannot resist them. And I think part of this ties in with the aspect of the inner abuser, meaning that in those areas where it seems right, normal, or deservable to be abused, there is an inner abuser that criticizes and abuses me, meaning the part of me that feels small and helpless. And the part of me that feels small and helpless cannot fight back, cannot resist the intensity of the internal critical parent. As a result, it is cowed by the inner abuser. In that same dynamic, when someone else, particularly in a position of authority on the outside, seeks to abuse me, often in a way that ties in with cultural chauvinism, there is the same fear, the same acceptance, the same knowing that I can't do anything about it, and there's no energy on the inside to push out and hold a boundary. Rather, there's a scared 5-year-old child waiting and expecting and knowing that they can't fight back, that they're too small. And when others push into that domain and abuse me, I may feel righteous anger, I may know that it's wrong, but I can't hold the boundary. And because I can't hold the boundary, I blame and feel hatred to them for pushing through that boundary, that there's no energy to hold. And this is a stuck point, because I cannot forgive myself. I cannot accept the part of me that gets pushed over by myself, by the internal abuser. And so I also cannot accept the part of me that is abused. And not being able to accept, love, and forgive the part of me that is abused, I then cannot forgive the abuser. And it's not very conscious where the abuser is inside. But I feel a tremendous amount of hatred towards the external abuser, the one that's too pushy, the one that's too insensitive, the one that's rude, the one that's domineering and dominating, the one that's inconsiderate. But yet I don't feel the ability to hold that boundary. And as I look at it and acknowledge that I participate in the abuse by allowing it, and that my body goes through these extreme contractions when I try to break that pattern. There's a feeling of terror, a feeling of wanting and being at the edge of death. And people just walk right over that. And I'm not sure what the solution is, but I think it's really important terrain to be aware of. And it's my impression that I have a couple of options. So I can either withdraw from those situations and find someone who isn't abusive. I've done a lot of that. Or I need to shift the dialogue somehow on the inside so that that part in me that's being abused has the full power and energy of a healthy adult within me at their back to stand up and hold a boundary. Because if instead I tighten, don't want to breathe, and wait to be hit in that moment, there's a message that it's okay to push in that terrain. And yet it is a terrain of a scared, helpless child waiting. And so it's profoundly abusive for someone to push on the outside, just as it was profoundly abusive in childhood. And yet I haven't found an emotional, energetic answer to that breath holding, to that shrinking. There's plenty of analytical response, but it doesn't send out the vibe, I'm valuable, don't push this boundary. It sends out the vibe, I expect to be hurt, I deserve to be hurt, and I won't stop you if you hurt me.